Okay, so we've looked at what the different settings within the particle system does, but we haven't actually tried to do something with it yet. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try to make smoke with our particle system, because usually with particle systems the main function of them is making special effects like smoke or explosions, fireworks, fire, and things like that. And smoke is one of the things that this particle system does pretty well. So we're going to have to change some of these settings. I'm going to actually reset my settings back to my default. And I want to pick something that's going to work really well for our smoke. So I'm going to choose the faded sphere. And let's see, so my colors are also going to need to change. I'm going to pick a darker gray color for my birth color. And I'll do a lighter gray color for my death color. And it starts darker and kind of fades out as it goes up. Let me go into my physics section, and the fire animation actually works really well for smoke too. Let me move this down a little bit. You can actually see that we're getting a pretty good, it almost looks like bubble shooting out now. So we're going to have to fix some of these adjustments. So one thing we want to do is we want to increase our birth size. And that's going to make them morph together a little bit more. And let's increase our death size a little bit as well. So we're starting to get there. Now the other thing we want to do is we need to lower our longevity. And that's going to make them fade out a little bit quicker. That's really going to start looking like smoke now. Let's see, let's lower our max opacity a little bit. And we'll put a tiny bit of resistance on it as well. And that's going to lower both the velocity and the gravity. There we go. That's looking a lot more like smoke now. You can continue to adjust these to try to get the right look that you want. But what we want to do now is we're actually going to try animating the smoke a little bit. Because it's okay to see like something smoking, if you want to have something look like it's steamy, path. Now, one way we can animate this is by going up into our producer and actually animating our position property. We can go in, maybe start high, enable our position keyframes, and just kind of work in the same way that we would for any other position, dragging around. It's important to do this with the position property and not the position for the layer, because the position property, by animating the position property like this, you're going to get this trail of smoke behind it, which is really nice. It gives it more of a realistic look. It follows this nice trail behind. If for some reason you didn't want that, there is a property that I skipped over when I was explaining the physics. It's called inherent velocity. You can increase that up, and that'll actually have it kind of predict the movement and move with the smoke, or with the producer. Kind of like you're sliding it along rather than having it trail behind. But generally speaking, I don't think that's the best use. So I typically don't use this inherent velocity property. Now, there is a small problem with animating the producer in this sort of way, and that we don't get those really nice curves that we can get when we animate a layer, because we're not seeing that motion guide. However, there's a really good way around this, using some techniques that we've looked at previously in other modules. And that's using a null object and connecting the position property of the null object to our position property of our producer using expressions. So let's go ahead and try that, and that way we can get a much more interesting movement out of our producer. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my keyframes off of my producer. Then we want to make a new null object. Remember, null objects have the usual properties of all layers on them, but they don't physically show up when you go out to render your video. It just shows up as this red box within your composition, but that won't render out. And where your anchor point for your null object is going to be where your producer actually is located at. So you want to put that wherever you want your producer to start at. It's going to be that little crosshair up in the top left corner of your null object. So I'm going to go ahead and rename mine particle mover since that's what it's doing. And I'm going to hit P to get my position property, and I'll start making my position keyframes on this. So I can do much more interesting movements with this. You know, instead of just moving in a straight line, I can actually go and do maybe something like a figure 8. So I can get these really nice curves. And then maybe I should probably just lock this layer for right now so I don't accidentally keep dragging it. Maybe I'll just go down like this at the end. If you want, you can even go back and adjust these handles like you would any other position property. And you can even add some easing, maybe at the beginning and the end, to kind of have it slow start and then kind of move into the end. Okay. And if you want to, you can go into the graph editor and like go into your speed graph and make further adjustments to these if you like. But for the interest of saving time, I'm just going to leave it with the easy eases for now. I think that'll be enough to get us started. Okay, so we've got our particle mover moving in the direction that we want it now. What we need to do now is we need to actually connect the particle position up to this. So I'm going to unlock my layer. And we need to find our particle position, so we need to expand our layer, expand effects, expand the particle system, into the producer, and then you'll find your position property down here. Now remember, to enable your expressions on this property, you're going to hold down the Option key and click on the stopwatch like you're making a keyframe for it, or enabling keyframes for it. Then to actually connect it up, you're going to take your pick whip and you're going to drag it up to the word position within the particle mover layer. Don't try to drag it to the layer itself. Go right to the property. When you release it, it'll auto fill out this information for you, and then you can deselect it, and now your particles will move in a much more interesting way. You get those nice curves and the easing and everything in there. Okay, so in this lesson we looked at how to work with the particle systems. We also looked at how to actually make smoke look more out of the particle systems that we were working with. In the next lesson, we're going to look at different particle systems that will actually let you use a layer as your particles.